Charlotte was in the midst of labour, under the guidance of a man who was not a doctor. He had some bizarre guidance to follow, which included exercising and refraining from food altogether. The days grew long and tiresome, and Charlotte was in labour for 2 days with this condition. As the hours wore on, the attendants grew more desperate, and Charlotte grew more feverish. Please continue to support my channel by subscribing. Even her appointed medical chief, Croft, was becoming increasingly nervous. He decided to call the obstetrician, John Sims, to advise on the situation, although he did not allow him to see her in person. It was 2 days later, on the 5th of November, when Charlotte had finally given birth at 9 p.m, sadly to a stillborn son. Charlotte must have been delirious and tiresome, and her response to the loss of her child was that it was will of God that she lost her son. However, this was not the end of the tragedy that unfolded that very day. Charlotte was in good spirits after the birth, perhaps because she was finally able to eat something. However, things quickly took a turn for the worst, and just after midnight, when the princess woke up, vomiting with horrific pains in her abdomen. Her medical chief examined her. She was clammy and bleeding. Croft became fatally concerned, so he took to waking her husband from his opiate-fueled sleep. He had been by her side during the labour and took an opiate to help him sleep. But Stockmar could not wake the prince, and so the princess took her final breaths without her beloved husband behind her side. Stockmar returned to the princess's side, only to witness her final words. She grabbed his hands and told him, "They have made me tipsy." He tried to leave the room again to wake Leopold, aware that she did not have long left, and this is when she called out violently, "Stocky, Stocky!" She passed away before he could rush back to her side. England's much-loved next heir to the British throne had tragically died at only 21 years old, and the public were mortified with grief. But the public felt nothing compared to the grief and sadness that would take over the life of Prince Leopold, her beloved husband. The prince finally awoke, but he awoke to a situation that he had never envisioned. Stockmar later put it was the destruction at one blow of every hope and happiness of Prince Leopold. He would go on to be with an actress who had a greater likening to his late wife before finally remarrying, and he would go on to call his first daughter Charlotte after her. Surprisingly, and despite all of the upset her parents had caused her throughout her life, even they were also devastated by the loss of their daughter. George was so beside himself that he couldn't even attend her funeral. Her mother heard of her daughter's death through word of mouth due to George withholding the news and Leopold being too consumed in grief to reach out. Even then, there was more devastation still to come. The public wanted someone to blame for the premature death of a much-loved princess, and so they started pointing fingers at Richard Croft. Croft already blamed himself, and so this newfound hatred for him only fueled his doubts further. Only 3 short months later, while attending another birth, Croft shot himself, killing himself instantly. Charlotte's fate troubled everyone. The man whom she called off the engagement with, the detested Dutchman, the Prince of Orange, reportedly burst into tears when he heard the sad news. He then went one step further and persuaded his wife to get her ladies-in-waiting to observe a period of mourning for his almost wife. And when the public heard of Charlotte's passing, Henry Brougham wrote, "It really was as though every household throughout Great Britain had lost a favourite child. Everyone, even the poorest people in the nation, wore black armbands in mourning for Charlotte, so many in fact that ribbon makers had to beg the government to shorten the mourning period for fear that they would go bankrupt. Charlotte was laid to rest on November 19, 1817, with her stillborn son by her feet. Though a personal tragedy, her death also changed the fate of the English crown. With the passing of the heir of England, the throne had to scramble to produce more children. And eventually, Charlotte's uncle had a child he named Alexandrine Victoria, the future Queen Victoria, and she took up the crown that Charlotte tragically lost. Please continue to support my channel by subscribing. Please comment, like and subscribe if you wish for more stories, and leave your suggestions below and I will endeavour to cover them.